So here are the Beatles on top of a gate. Amazing. This is the Penny Lane Development Trust. Well worth going to explore, see what's behind those gates.
The Penny Lane Development Trust started in 2002. A group of people were campaigning to save the fields on Grove Mount from housing developers. I got involved because I'd previously done a couple of summer schemes with, a colleague and lots of children in the area, and decided I wanted to build a community centre in my own area. I didn't really know how, what with, who with, or where it would be. But I got involved with the group that were campaigning to save the fields, and that was the start of probably attending thousands of meetings. But I loved it. I retrained as a youth worker and then eventually started to work with all the young people in our community. I retrained in other areas to support those young people. But in the background, our focus was always to save this piece of land. And we just carried on. And then one year, whilst I was in another post, the government had issued a white paper stating that local authorities should give disused assets to community groups. Now, Penny Lane has always been classed as an affluent area in comparison to some areas in Liverpool, but I'm sure if you asked lots of the Penny Laners, they'd disagree with that. The government who had issued the white paper had said that they had a budget of £30 million to help, I think it was 36 viable projects. So we applied and yay, we got an in principle award. It was the smallest project of all of them, and most of the other projects had a building, but we didn't. We had a field with a burnt out shed. And they loved to put that picture up. So I'd asked our architects to do me a foam board of an image of what it was going to look like. And this is what it looked like, what it is today. So I used to carry that foam board everywhere with me, all across the country, at many conferences, and say, but this is what we're getting. And in the end, we got it. So, things change, politics change, governments change, and that will affect everything at a local level. So whilst we still do a great deal within the community, we are limited to what we can do with the resources that we've got. I remember people saying, well, how are you going to make it sustainable, because we're not funded for running costs as such. And we were like, you know what, it's not rocket science. We're on the most famous lane in the world, and thousands of people come here every year. So bit by bit, tour guides started to arrive and bring people from all over the world. We have an international map here, and you can, if you wish, put a pin in your map to say where you're from, and the map tells us where people come from, and it is all around the world. So it's a lovely place. It's very calm. I remember when we first moved in, I was asked to go on an all-day Beatles tour. So I thought, well, I better find out what all this Beatles malarkey's about if I'm going to be here. So I did. And by the end of the day, I was broken in half with in and out of the cars. But I was ashamed to say there were so many places in my own city that I didn't know were related to the Beatles. So I found it really, really interesting. And then over a period of probably 2 years, we had about 54 individual tour guides that used to bring visitors here every week. So I didn't start really recording who came here till 2015, and we've been here 5 years then. And we've had well over, 150,000 international tourists to date. And we use our community centre to deliver a range of activities for the local community. We've been here now for 14 years, on site. It's lovely. I don't consider it a job. It's in my blood, I think, now. And you get to see and meet so many interesting people from all quarters of the world. We don't charge for anyone to come in. Anyone can come in, take photographs, you know. Usually there's somebody famous will pop in during a week, particularly during tourist season. And we're very, very lucky in the fact we have 3 of the original quarrymen that do come here regularly and support us. One only lives over the road, so he's more of a local member of the community than anyone famous to us, and will go to the shops for us as well. But yeah, it's a lovely place. We've got a lovely garden outside. We try to theme things up Beatle related. Not everything, you know, Paul McCartney hasn't been here before anyone asks. Yet, I always say, not yet. But you know, it's Penny Lane, and there should be something for people to come and see and to do. We don't exploit it as such. We accommodate it. I think more should be made of Penny Lane, personally. You know, as it's been said time and time again, if this was in America, it would be like Graceland's. And, you know, I'm sure it would. But it's an unassuming lane, and Penny Laners would prefer it to be called a Penny Lane community. Because from my chair where I sit, I look out the window and I see that a row of terraced houses, and I know that the school that John and George went to is right behind that. And if you come to Penny Lane, 99% of the time you'll probably see me. It will make you very, very welcome. So when you come into the Penny Lane Community Centre, we've adapted lots of things, you know, that are Beatle related to make the Beatles experience a bit better. So we've got the Wonder Wall, which is amazing, and that was done by a guy that did some work experience with our architects. And it's a lovely opportunity. It's very colourful, it's very bright, and it's a wonderful photo opportunity. Then we've got the Octopus Garden, and in that garden we grow fruit, vegetables, and it's a lovely, idyllic place to sit and contemplate. There's lots of lovely plants and shrubs that have been donated by the local community. The local community come and sit in the garden, read a book. Students come in, study. We have Keep Fit out there, you know. We have Lipper come in with a load of the young ones to go around, so we plant things out for the little ones to things. Local schools use the garden now and again, they come over. We've got the fire station doors from Allison Fire Station. That unfortunately now has been sold and has been redeveloped into housing. So the doors were going to landfill. I'd contacted them prior to the pandemic to ask if there was anything we could have, but everything got lost in translation. And then they emailed Strawberry Fields and said, do they want the doors? And they said, well, no, but Penny Lane might want them. So we reconnected and we got the doors. I won't go into the wheres and why-fors. It was very difficult, but we got the doors. And we've now got them erected up on our site with a small piece of history about that. And there's lots of doors left over, which we've made into lovely wooden blocks as souvenirs. So if you're here and you want one, you know, we'll be happy to sell you one. We recently had a big mural done on the side of our building of John and Paul. And I've been asked a number of times now, why have you only got 2? Are the other 2 hiding? Well, there's a number of reasons. One, it's hugely expensive to get a mural done like that. And I wanted it to just be John and Paul because we always say Paul, Penny Lane is synonymous with Paul, and it is obviously for the song, but John had a much bigger connection with Penny Lane than Paul did by virtue of living down here, his mum working on Allerton Road and you know, his good friend living in Dovedale Road round the corner. So yes, John and Paul, and we chose that image because it was before they were really famous. So it's bringing them back to their roots, so to speak. It would be lovely to think that they both walk down Penny Lane, but I'll ask Paul when he comes. Yeah, we've got these are our little mini submarines at the moment, but we've got a real submarine situated on the site. She's called Resurgam. I say a she because she's happy. So, and that came about through Dave Jones from the Cavern. Dave's a friend of ours, and he messaged me one day and he said, "Do you want the little yellow submarine to go outside your centre?" And I said yes, and he said, "Well, you have to come and get it." So I asked him how many men it would take to lift it, and he said probably 3. So I went to see it, and it weighs just over a tonne, and I don't know any 3 men that could lift that. So we enlisted the help of the TA, the Army Reserves, and it took 9 of them to get it on the truck, and she was brought to Penny Lane. And it was about 6 months later, and Dave messaged me again to say he'd received an email from a lady inquiring about the submarine. And he said, "I'll let you read it because it's yours now, you can respond." And when I read it, I really cried, because the lady was working in a care home with the gentleman who'd built it, and his name was Arthur Johnson, and Arthur had dementia. And every time they had their talk therapy, Arthur talked about how he built this submarine and how he'd met the Beatles. And Jackie wasn't sure whether he was just making the story up or whether it really happened. So she decided to do a bit of research and ended up with me. So I phoned her and I said, "I'm looking at the submarine now." So she said, "Can you take a picture of it and send it to me?" So I did. And she showed it to Arthur that week. And she phoned me back and she said he cried. And he said, "I made that." So between us, we organised a reunion for Arthur and his family to come to Penny Lane. They live in Grimsby, and none of them had ever been to Liverpool before. So we got the local supermarket involved, who made a big submarine cake. We got Liverpool Cares involved, who reconstructed a 1950s set of furniture, to try and maybe, make Arthur feel more comfortable. We had the local school come along and sing "We All Live in a Yellow Submarine," but 26 members of Arthur's family came, and we actually wrote a book about it because we thought, it should be remembered. When we were exploring, why was it called a yellow submarine? Well, we realised then, at the same time that Arthur was building his submarine in his back garden, Paul was trying to write the lyrics to "We All Live in a Yellow Submarine." And there was no connection at that point. But when the film The Yellow Submarine was being premiered in London, the BBC, who'd previously reported on Arthur's submarine, because it does actually dive to 100 feet in its day. So the BBC contacted Arthur, and our little yellow submarine was whisked up to Piccadilly Circus. And if you watch the video of the premiere, you will see the submarine at the front. So there she sits out there, and she's photographed every day by hundreds of people. And she's a compliment to our centre, and she is original, So yeah. Yes, we're a charity and we're non-for-profit, as we don't get any core funding from any source to run the development. Anything that we only support local artists, so anything that we sell here at the centre, if it's made by us or created by our craft groups, we get 100% of that money goes back to the centre, which means we don't have to put the room higher up for groups. We charge very minimum fees for our activities, which means more local people can benefit from them. So it is important. So if you do buy something, you are actually helping to keep the centre alive and the doors open. So I'm hoping to sell a lot this year with the electricity and the gas going up. But yeah, we do only support local artists because we find that they struggle greatly to get their work showcased with the fees that they have to pay. So, you know, so it's a win-win situation, really. And people are really supportive. We get loads of lovely local people making donations of items for us to sell, Beatle related and locally related as well. So that's amazing. A lot of the things that we do we rely a lot on volunteers, which are the lifeblood of any project. And the website is notjustanylane at weebly.com. I'm trying to put as much, I've started off current and I'm going back. So I've put quite a few things like the history and things, but there's a lot to go on it. But now that it's up and running, we can add things to the history, to the back history